Welcome to our GAT Labs webinar, Inside Google Workspace Automation, Unlocking Efficiency for Your Teams, hosted by Liam Dow.
Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your time. And today, kind of going to talk a little bit about Google Workspace Automation. This is a GAT Labs webinar, but I'm going to kind of talk about it a bit more holistically as well. So, going to cover some tools that you as a Google Workspace admin have access to, and try to keep it applicable, regardless of your organization, the type of business that you are. So, each business has different processes, but we're trying to make this quite applicable to each of you that have joined today. So a quick intro from my side. My name is Liam Dow. I look after the enterprise accounts here at GAT Labs. Been with the business, I'm just coming up a year now. I've actually been working with Workspace customers since about 2015, and I think automation around workspaces it's a really powerful thing. Ultimately, out the box, Google provides a lot of great features, functionality, different settings, but there's only so far that you're able to kind of customize that environment to fit your needs. But they do provide a bunch of APIs, so you can start to create things. You can use other services to make it work better for your business. So I hope all of you kind of enjoy this session. Now, let me just move on. A couple housekeeping things just to touch on before kind of getting into the slides. There'll be a couple polls. So, these polls, that they're not general knowledge questions. We're looking for your opinion. So, when we get to those, you'll see the question on the screen pop up, and you have multiple choice answers, and just share your thoughts. We're just keen to understand, I guess, what your focuses are, what your interests are, kind of in this space. If you have any questions throughout, please feel free just to go to the chat. So if you navigate to the bottom right, you'll see the chat. I'm joined by the rest of my team that they'll be there, and they can answer any questions that you might have in the session. So please do feel free to ask away. And then towards the end of the session as well, we've got a nice kind of a bit of a freebie for a thank you for joining. So yes, hope all of you are able to stick around. Now, in terms of the agenda today, so we're going to start off just talking a little bit about the value of automation. So we looked at a number of case studies and kind of like industry reports about automation. Some of which focus specifically on Google Workspace. And talking about the value there, and also some of the challenges that exist when we're talking about automation, and then kind of covering some some use cases, so some practical examples of automation in Google Workspace. So again, trying to focus on things that I feel are probably applicable to every kind of organization: onboarding, offboarding, responding to incidents or issues. And then some other nice kind of quick wins. So yeah, hopefully gives a bit of inspiration there and ideas of ways you can approach automating tasks. And then finding the right tool. So look, as I say, this is a GAT Labs webinar, but we've taken a bit of a step back and we wanted to cover things that really for all admins that you can kind of look at, the options that are available to you. Kind of I guess some of the thought processes, the things to consider when you're looking for the right tool to automate a given task, and then how you can actually implement it. So how do you start kind of rolling this out in your own organization, and then just like a quick wrap up at the end. So yeah, to kick off, the power of automation in numbers. So if you joined our previous webinar, which was around drive security, you might be familiar with this stat already, but 70 to 80% of IT incidents are caused by human error. So, albeit, the benefit of automation can be just reducing time and effort and, saving money. It can also just help from that perspective as well, and actually, make sure that things happen a bit more consistently and reduce that risk of human error happening, which, is obviously a source for a lot of problems. But some of the other kind of benefits that exist. Let me talk about the ones on the left-hand side first. So the Ministry of Finance at the state of Guanajuato, so the Google Workspace customer, they were able to reduce the time and effort involved for doing their audit by 35 to 40%. And obviously as like a public sector organization also handling finances, audits are a frequent thing for them. So that really represented a pretty huge change, a really big benefit. And then of course there's the efficiencies that you get through automating things. Again, Deloitte, they reduced their management reports from a 5 to 8 day endeavor down to a 1 hour task. So it's not that either these organizations with this extra time are just sitting back and relaxing. What it means, they can put their efforts and spend time on more, I guess, like strategic things. They're able to kind of work on things that provide value and really kind of push the business forward rather than handling these repetitive and kind of manual tasks. And then obviously time is money. So Bank Colombia, they freed up 127,000 hours each year, which equated to $19 million in savings for them. So obviously it scales as if it's a very large business and it's a process that everyone's involved in, automating that task can really have a lot of benefits there. But there are challenges. It's not as easy as it sounds. The complexity of automating something, particularly those which would provide the most value, because they're the most kind of complex and they take a long time, long processes, they might be the harder ones to automate. Ultimately they're being done manually because there are nuances involved, and maybe it needs like that human intervention to kind of understand all these different criteria or different circumstances that might arise when they're handling a certain task. So that is certainly one of the things that can make it complex. But also technical knowledge. Do you have the skills internally or the time, the resources internally to actually deliver and implement some form of automation? There's the technical debt aspect as well, which is quite a big risk when you start to implement automation. An example, maybe you have someone in your team, someone in your business that is really good at programming. They've written some scripts to automate certain tasks, and not to pour cold water on that provides value. It can be very useful, but if that knowledge is really restricted just to them, if that person leaves the organization, if they're just not in on a given day and something goes wrong, do you have the capabilities to fix that, to support that? And that really can create technical debt for an organization where, if they automate it with, lots of kind of complex technology, potentially it becomes a risk in the future to actually take ownership of that and keep it running properly. And then job displacement. So, I've heard many times before people concerned about, automating themselves out of a job. And, that is a risk to some degree. It can be, depending on, what it is that you're automating and, the kind of role in the industry. But, we've got a stat on the next slide that I hope provides a little bit of reassurance on that. But absolutely is something to kind of be aware of. And then tooling. So, actually finding the right tool, the right solution to automate something. There are lots of ways to accomplish the same goal. And, finding the right path and taking the right option to actually do it, is difficult. There's kind of got to weigh up, the benefit of automating it versus, I don't know, the cost of another product, or working with, maybe like a consultant or a third party, and, whether it's going to be scalable. Is this going to be the product that you want to use for automation on an ongoing basis? Will it integrate with other things that you want to do in the future? So, these are kind of some of the things you need to think about, and some of the challenges therein. This is the last slide on this section here, but this is just, I guess, kind of some insights into, automation as a space, where it's kind of headed, what's kind of the future growth for it. And that top stat there in the top left, the $12.07 billion. So that is the projected global business process automation market by 2031. So, that's what we're talking about today is business process automation. So, even if you're automating a task that you would normally do as an admin manually in Google Workspace, that is a business process you manage and handle. So, automating these things can really, provide a lot of value, and you can see that, businesses are investing more and more in that space. So it's good knowledge for you to have as well. And then, on the other side as well, it's not just obviously business processes and, today's session being Google Workspace, AI-powered robotic process automation, again, another large growing part of the kind of industry. So that might be kind of like the manufacturing of electronic goods or cars. Going from the actually building it to maybe even designing elements as well. So it's very much a space that is just going to keep growing as time goes on. But that stat at the bottom there, that's the one I wanted to highlight, which is albeit there are going to be jobs kind of impacted by this. The expectation is that there will, essentially be more jobs created to actually handle these changes and manage the automation, on an ongoing basis as well. So, that is, kind of based off a lot of the research that we've done there. Now, look, here is the first poll before we go into some of the use cases for Google Workspace. So, which regular admin task consumes the most time at your organization? And let's see, this poll should pop up in just a moment. Super, there we go, thank you. So it is pretty heavy towards the user onboarding and offboarding. And security and compliance, audits and investigations. Great, okay. I can see there's going to be some GAT Labs customers here then, because that's an area that we're very strong in. So cool, okay. No, that's good to know. Thank you all. And quite timely as well, because after this next section, I will touch on user onboarding and offboarding. But I wanted to take a step back again and just talk about what are the building blocks when you are looking at automation in the context of Google Workspace. So there's the Google APIs. Google provides an API for the vast majority of their products. So each of these you can do. Effectively most things that you can do as an end user or as an admin, there is an API endpoint for that. And there's even some applications I've not listed here where there's an API as well. But, you could essentially compose different sets of actions, workflows, automation, where you're using different elements across all of those APIs, putting it together to build something that provides value to your business. So, the specific kind of processes that might be applicable really are going to vary business to business. But I put some examples here, which again I think are relevant to most organizations. User onboarding, offboarding, everybody has to handle that at some point. And then security, obviously it's always going to be important regardless of your kind of organization. You need to ensure you've got a secure environment. And then things like auditing as well, kind of like actually reporting on your data, understanding how your users are making use of the product. As I say, there's going to be a bunch more things as well. I'm sure, those of you on this call today probably have, are aware of certain things that you're having to do day in, day out, or people in your business are that require a lot of time and effort. And then, what is it that kind of joins those two together, the processes and then these Google APIs that are available? Well, you've got a few options. and the two on the left-hand side there, app script, app sheet. Both of these are native Google solutions. So these are available to you as a workspace admin. And they can integrate with the Google APIs relatively easily. And are potential options for you to kind of design custom solutions with. There's the marketplace products. So GAT Labs being one of them, but there are a large number of different products out there in the marketplace where software developers, companies, are able to design their own solutions and put them up there on the marketplace for customers like yourself to use. And then, of course, custom development as well. You could create something yourself. You could write your own application, your own scripts, integrate it with the APIs, and create any kind of level of customization and automation that you want to do. Now, as I said, the kind of use cases I was going to talk about now is onboarding, offboarding, incident response. But if you just think about what is suitable for automation, in Google Workspace, it's kind of tasks that have, I guess, these attributes. The time-consuming, time-sensitive often. High volume, repeatable, standardized. These tasks are things that happening often. And also that risk of human error. If it's something that is a long process, and happens a lot, potentially people might skip steps or do things slightly incorrectly. So those are the types of things that you should think about as like suitable scenarios for automation. Now, this slide is just an example here of like a manual process for user onboarding and offboarding. I'm sure you're doing something different in your organization. It really does vary business to business how you might handle this process. So this is just an example of typical business and how they might handle this from a manual perspective. So on the onboarding front, the requester they ask a Google admin to create a new user for them. So it could be HR, it could be a line manager, and that admin will create a user. And then they may need to go speak with that manager and find out, what is it that person's actually going to do? What's their job? What department are they going to be in? Do they need to have different send as addresses, to assign aliases? What data do they need access to? Google Groups, calendars, even just, adding them to sharing on specific drive files, it could go to that kind of level of detail. But that involves time. There's you have to consult with other people to find out what the right things are to set that user up. And so you'll follow all those steps manually, and then of course you've got to wait until that person joins, and actually provide them with the credentials to log in. And maybe that is over a video call or actually going to that person in person. But each of those steps is effectively a manual thing that you need to do. And if you are handling a large number of those each week, that could really consume a lot of time and effort. Maybe even take up an individual's time just managing that process. And then on the other side, kind of offboarding as well, similar, driven by someone requesting this to happen, and that poses a risk because let's say you're particularly busy in your IT team on a given day, and the HR team say this person needs to be offboarded, urgently. Maybe that's not picked up. Maybe there's a delay in that process, and someone that has left your business, you should no longer have access to data. There's a period of time where they still do. But to kind of talk through this process, maybe the first thing they would do would be suspend that user, move them to a different OU, and then maybe the manager says, hey, actually I need access to that user's emails. So by default in Google Workspace as an admin, you can't just delegate access to an inbox. So the user account can also not be suspended when you want to delegate access. So you would need to unsuspend them, log in, manually set up delegates, or you could use command line tools as well to do that. But all of those things do consume a fair bit of time and effort. And then maybe transferring the drive files to somebody else, and freeing up calendar events. Again, leavers might have recurring calendar events in some of your meeting rooms, and they could stick around, and people can't book a slot because somebody who's left the organization has an hour recurring event every week at a certain meeting room. So you've got to handle those things as well. Look through it, delete them, or transfer them. And then of course, if there is the delegate scenario, you as an admin need to wait that period, ask the manager, have you finished now? Am I able to continue offboarding this user? And I would say that a lot of admins probably forget to kind of do that follow-up, and potentially you are then paying for 2 licenses, when you may not actually need to do that. And then obviously at the end, deleting a user, you do want to free up that license that's being consumed. And in doing that, you can lose some of their data. You may be losing certainly their Gmail data and potentially their drive as well if you haven't transferred that across. So that's just a typical, I guess, manual process. But looking at that same process and automating it, you could design this so that it is directly integrated with an HR system, or your HR team are kind of mastering and kind of driving the process. They're defining a service start date, a job role, the department, and then based off of those conditions, different things happen. So, if they're in a certain team and they've got a certain title, then they should have an alias, they should be in a certain OU, they should get access to all of this different data, be in these groups, be added to these shared calendars, and you could even automate the actual delivery of the credentials to them. So, day one, maybe they receive their an email, first thing, and that secure way for you to be able to actually provide those login details to that new user. Similar on the offboarding side, have it driven kind of from our kind of HR system. The end date is kind of specified there, so it automatically happens when that date comes, and then the different steps are based on the conditions that you set. And it doesn't need to be job role or department. It could be really anything that you choose to set up. And that could be involving the movement of their files to their manager, or the head of that department. Automatically handle that email delegation nuance where you've got to unsuspend the user, delegate, and then resuspend at a later date. You could just have that whole process automated. And the same with the calendars, again, just have their events either deleted or transferred elsewhere. You'll see in this kind of example, I've said, wait for 60 days. That's typically going to be enough time for a manager to have access to the emails. And then I've actually, kind of automated the process of creating a Vault export. So their emails, their Drive files, their chat messages, and then automatically downloading that and putting it into a Google Drive location. So that step in particular is not something that's viable for you to do as an admin for all of your leavers manually. It's time consuming. You've got to create that Vault export, wait for Google to prepare it, and then you've got that risk of downloading that to your local machine where you now have some potentially sensitive data, from this lever sitting on a local device, and then upload it. And, that could use up all of your bandwidth. Potentially it's, 10s, 20 gigabytes of data. It could just take a long time. So, that's the type of thing that you could automate without having to, handle that type of thing manually, which, as I say, is just not particularly viable. So, yeah, just to recap on those, manual processes, time-consuming, risk of human error, and not just human error. I think, some of those steps I talked about, I imagine, there's some admins potentially on the call that, are thinking, well, that's not what I would do. I would just create the user, and then whatever access they need, we'll handle that at a later date. If they need access to a shared drive, we'll grant it there and then. But, ultimately, you can have an improved joiner experience. If you're able to set all these things up in advance, which, as I say, might not be manageable to do manually, then you can just help enable that your new starters to really, be effective from day one. And yeah, as I say, the nuances that you have based on location or different teams, departments, you can have that set out in your automation to kind of have these conditional checks and have different logic applied there. So yeah, significant time savings and the ability to just enhance the process and do things that you may not be able to do manually, or you could do, but would just mean that that the entire task is significantly more time consuming. So that was a quick overview on onboarding and offboarding. Now, another really good opportunity to automate tasks is incident response. And the example I've put up here, this is more of a security incident. But I'm sure there's a number of tasks or kind of reports that you get frequently as an admin where there's issues that you need to address for your end users. But in this example, it's somebody logs in from a suspicious location. Maybe they start downloading in bulk lots of your Drive files or sending them all to a Gmail address. Now, if that type of thing happens, you as an admin, first, you need to be aware that it's happening. So you need to have a monitoring solution in place. And, maybe it's not something that you have currently. But once you are aware and you find this type of activity, you need to manually go through the process of investigating it, looking through different activity logs, and then deciding how you're going to kind of take action. Is it that you're going to clear the user session, reset the password, and talk to the manager? Maybe you're a junior admin and you don't really know what steps to do. You're not sure how you're supposed to respond to it. And all of that takes time, and potentially there's a big security risk happening. And in that time, it's kind of elongating the incident. And then, once you do resolve that, you are communicating out to the stakeholders manually, and you are, maybe just filling it into an ITSM. So you've got a log of what happened. So pretty standard, typical process, but if you were to automate this, you could. So Google's APIs that a lot of them provide push notifications, where effectively you can subscribe to for certain events that you think are important, and then based on when that event occurs, that's the trigger for a certain set of steps to happen. And there's no investigation required. It's kind of the logic that you've defined up front is going to happen 24/7, 365. It doesn't matter if this is out of hours, middle of the night, on the weekend. The automation doesn't need to rest like us. So it really kind of takes that whole incident down from this long kind of issue with a lot of manual processes down to an instant resolution. And yeah, you could even have it feed back in to your ITSM, so that when you start on, say, the Monday, you see an incident occurred and you're able to review that more as a retrospective rather than an ongoing issue that you kind of need to handle. So yeah, just to highlight the specifics I've highlighted here as the events. It wouldn't need to necessarily be this. I'm sure there's many other things you could think of that you would want to monitor and make sure certain actions happen when they occur. And then some other kind of quick wins or ideas, I guess, as well, to consider when it comes to automation. So, the vast majority of Workspace customers are going to be using org units to segregate your users and control access to various applications. Same with Google Groups. You might be using those for same purposes or just different distribution lists. But when you are already organizing your users in that way, you could use that as a trigger to take a set of actions. So you can have that be when somebody is moved into this org unit, I want all of these actions to happen. Whether that is sharing content with them in Drive or setting different kind of settings against their Google account. So that's a really powerful way to configure and to think about how to automate things. Because then you as an admin, you're just moving people around, and on the back end, all of these actions are occurring automatically for you. And on the group side as well, it depends on the workspace plan that you're on, but dynamic Google Groups, they're a really good feature where, the membership of a Google Group, you can choose to have that automatically managed based off of their profile attributes. So, if they're a manager, put them in this Google Group. If they're in the marketing team, automatically put them in this Google Group. But it's not actually available on some of the lower plans. But it's possible to do that with the API. You're able to just, look at the admin SDK, look at users' attributes, and then automatically populate a Google Group. So again, it's just a creative way of kind of, getting to the same outcome, by building some form of automation. Then Gmail filters and labels. So, again, I'm sure a lot of you have had users that, are coming to you with issues to do with their Gmail account. They can't find an email, or their, emails are being moved into the wrong label, and, those types of issues. Maybe people who aren't as familiar with Gmail. You could define a set of filters and labels for all of your users and just push those out. And then they've got a consistent email experience. So your support team, your service desk, when they're receiving tickets about this topic, they're all kind of working at the same level. That they all understand how the user's making use of of Gmail, and provide the same level of support. So it can really make things easier for you as an admin, but also improve the user's experience as well. And last but not least, email signatures. I'm sure a lot of you are aware you can't manage email signatures centrally in Google Workspace, but it's a pretty important thing for many businesses to control those. You want to have brand consistency. You want to be able to apply, images and links to your website, or kind of maybe like a campaign that you're running. Now, you can manage that via the APIs. So, you can automatically populate those signatures for all of the users, have those applied on a recurring basis, in case a user goes and modifies it after you've set it. But yeah, these are, I guess, again, just some of the quick wins, some of the things that I felt are probably applicable to most in the audience here. Now, before we go into the next section, here's the next poll. Is what's your top priority when choosing an automation tool for Google Workspace? Okay, doke. So ease of use seems to be top, and then levels of customization and flexibility. Great. Okay. Yep. No, I mean, ease of use. I mean, rolling out automation, getting that done as fast as you possibly can is an important factor. If you're spending all of your time actually trying to manage that process, then it reduces the benefits it's providing ultimately. So, great. Okay. Well, look, finding the right tool for automation. I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the considerations, the factors, the things that you should think about when you're looking to automate a certain process. So, is the tool, does it fit your needs? From a technical perspective, is it compatible with all the services you need it to have? And that includes, marketplace products. It could be that it can manage some elements of Google Workspace, but it doesn't support Drive, for example, or it doesn't support calendars. So review it, think about, is it going to cover the full breadth of what you need it to handle? Do you have the internal capabilities to actually use that, or to build it to kind of service this automation? And is it flexible enough? Are you going to be able to extend and build on this in the future? And a lot of these are all kind of interdependent, but like maintenance as well. Do you have the skills and the knowledge to be able to maintain this on an ongoing basis? Are you going to need a third party to handle that? Is there going to be a cost to that? And is this going to be reliable? Is this something which is going to function the way I need it to? And then, yeah, cost and return on investment. How much is it going to cost actually just to service, just to have it running? How much time and resources will it take to implement it, to get it up and running, and then look after it on an ongoing basis? Because ultimately, those three things, versus the time saved is how you're going to be able to calculate that return on investment and see if this is the right option for you. Last but not least, security. When you're implementing automation for Google Workspace, effectively you're providing very privileged access to your data, and that's where all of your company data is, and that there's risks involved there. So something to always kind of be conscious of. API keys, where they're going to be stored, who's responsible for these kind of things. Now, this is kind of just a quick overview of a number of the options I talked about before. So starting with custom development, look, there's a lot of benefits there. You've got the full control over the solution. You design exactly what it is that you want it to do. You could integrate it with lots of other services, and you're not paying for more software. There might be a cost involved to service it. Potentially, you've got to run it on a server, so that there could be costs there. That there would be costs as well in terms of maintaining it. And that topic I mentioned before about technical debt. Is your entire team able to maintain this on an ongoing basis? And yeah, you're kind of at risk of reinventing the wheel with this approach. There are a lot of products available in the marketplace, and that not even just the marketplace. There's a lot of things available that maybe someone's fixed and they published it online that you could use. So albeit you'll kind of get the best outcome, or the outcome, the solution that you want, maybe it isn't the best outcome in the long run. And then Google App Script. So, it's kind of a little step up in terms of complexity. There is a native Google solution. You don't need to kind of think about the running developer environment. You don't need to run servers. This is native in Google. It's a cloud service, but you need to write the code for this still. You do need the JavaScript knowledge to be able to build this. It is easily integrated with the APIs out the box, so it's much easier to kind of get the ball kind of moving. You can connect it into the different services, but ultimately it is limited in terms of its functionality as well. There's a limit on how long an app script execution time for a script. So it can only be 6 minutes long, and then it'll stop. So depending on what it is you're trying to automate, it's not going to be a suitable kind of solution for you. And then Google App Sheet. So again, this is a native Google solution. It is relatively new. It's a no-code platform which you can use to build your own applications in Google Workspace. And out the box, it integrates with a bunch of their APIs and even non-Google services. I think Dropbox being one. So if you're trying to build some kind of automation around that, like a business process, App Sheets could be a good option. But there is an additional license cost, and to do admin-centric tasks, you're still going to have to do some development kind of on the back end. It's not, App Sheets isn't intended as an admin-focused application. It's kind of more generic, and maybe you'd use it as a CRM or like an order management system. But yeah, if you wanted to design this to manage your user onboarding and offboarding, you'd still need to kind of do some custom development to integrate that with App Sheets. And then, of course, the third-party products that are on the marketplace. So GAT Labs being one. Pros, that low to zero maintenance to you as the kind of the customer. That is handled by the vendor. New features released regularly, and again, I'm not talking just specifically about GAT Labs. a lot of these organizations that are offering services and products there, they'll have teams that are, monitoring the changes coming from Google and building new solutions as they become available. But I think most importantly, you can deploy them in minutes rather than weeks or months. You can get up and running very, very quickly, and that from a support perspective, there's a third party really handling the vast majority of problems and issues that could occur. Of course, there's a cost to that, though. There is an additional cost, license cost for your workspace management. It can be tricky to choose the right service. There's a lot of products out there, and if you're going to kind of assess all of them, that's a time-consuming task in and of itself. And then, of course, you need to have your team enabled to use that product and trained up to use it effectively. Now, I'll touch on this very briefly. I am conscious of time. I know that I'm running a little bit late right now, but yeah, this is an analogy some of you might be familiar with. It is often used to explain the difference between software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, all these different as a service acronyms. But on the far left there, it's like if you wanted a pizza and you want to have it exactly how you have envisage it and planned, you could grow your own tomatoes, make your own pizza dough, go through the whole process, and I'm sure at the end of it you're going to have the pizza that you had planned, and I'm sure it's very good. But when you kind of move up that stack, it shows how the responsibilities change. When kind of a different kind of product to solve this problem. So right on the far end, it's more of a restaurant where you're going somewhere and you're defining exactly what it is you want, and someone else is handling all that for you. So all you need to kind of know is what it is that you need, and someone else will provide that to you. So it's just a small analogy. I think it's a nice way to kind of think about it when you are looking at these different tools, to put it in that kind of context. Right, so we're coming towards the end of the session here. So implementing workspace automation. Now, before I go through this, I would highlight we are going to be sending a kind of post-webinar document to you in the coming days, and it's going to kind of cover a lot of things I've talked about, and also around how you can start to implement automation in your own environment. But really, it begins with identifying the areas that you want to automate. I'm sure many of you already have things that are in mind and that you want to kind of change and automate. But look at the time-consuming, the high effort, high volume, repetitive tasks. Speak with the rest of your team, but not just IT. You also talk with your end users and understand what kind of things you could do to provide them value as well. Once you've kind of made that list, you know these things that you could automate. Do a bit of research. Identify the right solution for this. You can look at the Workspace API reference. That's going to tell you whether this is actually possible. It's quite a technical way to kind of approach that as a problem, but you could also check things like GitHub, Stack Overflow. It's likely there's developers out there or other admins like you where they maybe talked or asked these kind of questions before. See what other people have done. And then, of course, the marketplace as well. Have a look and see what other products can provide, and if this is a problem that has been solved before. And once you've kind of decided, the way that you're going to move forward with it, you want to develop and test this automation. And I would always kind of recommend try to test this on a test environment if you have one available, or at least on test users rather than kind of on your live production users. And whilst you're going through that process, think of the edge cases. Think of things that do happen from time to time. Maybe get one of your colleagues to actually test it as well. Try to break that, and that going through that process as well is going to allow you to iterate and improve and make it better. And when you do kind of decide, let's push this out. I think this is going to provide value to us. Communicate that out to the end users or the parties that could be affected. You want to get the feedback from them as well. But I think the most important one is to document it. Write down somewhere that's accessible to the rest of your team that what it is that you've built, so that if you were to ever leave the organization, or anything, if you retire, anything to happen to you, someone else can pick that up and actually look after that on an ongoing basis.
That concludes our webinar. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and found it insightful. To learn more, you can visit our website at gatlabs.com.